Love it or hate it, Tim Lester is the new offensive coordinator for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Today, some reasons for optimism, why to get excited about this and possibly fix what has ailed the Iowa offense. All today, Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, here we are today after the reaction to the hiring of Tim Lester. We will break things down and try to bring you a little bit more optimism. We have a lot of comments and we will dig into the mailbag as well. A lot of reaction to what we heard from you in Tim Lester's hiring. And we will get ready for tonight's matchup as Indiana plays host to our Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa currently is a 2-point favorite over at FanDuel. We'll take a peek at the game, the matchup, and what's it going to take for Iowa to run their win streak to 5 in a row against the Indiana Hoosiers. But the topic at hand as we kick things off today is Tim Lester, and certainly laid out a lot of my thoughts yesterday about it. A hire that doesn't excite the fan base. I think we've seen that one. A lot of people saying, well, just give him a chance. And obviously that's what we're going to do. I mean, we don't have subpoena power here. We're not going to be able to go out there and overturn the hiring of an offensive coordinator. That's not going to happen. Yes, we will give him a chance, but we're also going to give you opinion. That's what this is about. In my opinion right now, it was not an inspiring hire. It was not a big name. And one thing I continue to go back to is the inability to attract some high-level candidates. I mean, when your final two are Kevin Johns and Tim Lester, we're not talking about the who's who that everybody across the country are looking to hire these guys. You're talking about two guys that were out of work, two guys that didn't have a whole lot of options. Tim Lester was possibly on his way to become the offensive coordinator at Troy, and Kevin Johns is still out there looking for his next destination. That's a surprising part to me. I know that Iowa's offense has become really a punchline in national circles of college football over the last couple of years and the way that it's cratered, but it hasn't always been this way. Kirk Ferentz is a very well-respected coach, but you wonder the parameters that were put in place and how that led into it, just how negative this job was looked at. You look at the talent that's on hand, and maybe that was a concern for some bigger name coaches across the country for the OC. Was it financial issues? And there's plenty of conversation about that. So a lot of different places to go. We laid a lot of that out yesterday, but today, let's take a look at this and see why this has a chance to be at least all right. Why we don't have to get down mired in the muck of this is going to be the worst hire. This is going to be the end of the Kirk Ferentz era, because we know this is likely the last major hire that he is going to make. I mean, the likelihood that he is going to be out there making a new hire for offensive coordinator, for defensive coordinator, is just incredibly slim. And as we continue to wait to see if John Budmeyer is eventually the wide receiver coach, we talked about that, a week and a half ago, that looked to be what inside the walls of Fort Kinnick was coming out there. That's not exactly dynamic in its own right, but that aside, we'll get to that whenever that news happens. If it is Bud Meyer or if they go a different direction at the wide receiver coach, as we told you weeks ago, it does appear, though, that Bud Meyer is going to be the guy at the wide receiver job. But optimism, let's get into it. And you start at the top. Well, it's not Brian Ferentz. And Brian, it's not just about the ineptitude as a play caller, a guy that didn't have a background in play calling and was handed the keys to the car and promptly crashed it into a wall. It was also putting together a scheme that made sense. In today's environment in college football, and something that we talk about a ton, is just the route concepts that Iowa runs. So simplistic, so the inability to ever really be able to stretch the field. And outside of the year with TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant at the tight end position, the great game against Ohio State, outside of that and those instances, there just wasn't a whole lot there. It just was a scheme that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And as things got worse and worse over the last 2.5 years, it felt like they created more and more. And even the concepts that at least would be sound, they just dissipated and they weren't there. You can blame the offensive line, you can blame injuries, and those are absolutely aspects to it. But your job is to try to scheme up a way to combat some of those negativities. And we never saw the ability for Brian Ferentz to do that. Tim Lester has, and he has been able to do it. There are some numbers that are concerning, but overall, when he had Western Michigan running at a high level, when he had the program that he was a quarterback for doing things, they were able to move the football and do it consistently with a myriad of different quarterbacks, with some skilled position players that would excite you. And they do it with a RPO based system that you can go and you can move the football both on the ground and through the air. Through the air has been the issue over the last couple of years. Even this season, in a 10-win season, we know that Iowa just didn't have a chance to move the football throughout the year. And after Cade McNamara was finally out for the season, it got uglier. You have a guy that has shown an ability to scheme things up. And we didn't have that with Brian Ferentz. That is step number one of something to be optimistic about. Mention a passing game that actually works. And this is going to be fun to see. So, one aspect that we definitely have to look at is what I was going to do. And is this going to be a system that is RPO based? RPO, run pass option. And I know a lot of people hear that and I think they perhaps maybe get it confused with read option plays. That's where you have the quarterback back there, normally in shotgun. He's looking at a defensive end or an outside backer, seeing if they crash, and he's either going to hand the ball off or he's going to keep it himself and go to the outside. That's read option. That's not what RPO is. Though there are tenets of that, what the RPO system is about is instead of reading what the defensive end is doing and you're going to run the ball either yourself as a quarterback or hand it off to a back, the run pass option is just that, run or pass. And you're looking at keys on the other side of the field. You're looking either at the defensive back and what they're doing at a particular matchup. You're seeing also what the defense does up front. If they're bringing somebody extra, is a backer coming? Is a safety coming? Those kind of things. And then you make the decision, are you going to work out of that? It's an offense that obviously, as we saw with Cade McNamara, can work incredibly well with him manning the controls. It's many of the things that he did and some of the basic tenets of Sharon Moore's offense at Michigan and what we saw as it evolved into with Jim Harbaugh. So that's something I think to get excited about. You don't have to have a runner to run this kind of offense at the quarterback position. Obviously, Iowa doesn't have anybody right now with Cade McNamara as a starter. If Deacon Hill remains the backup, those are not guys that are going to be tucking and run a whole lot. And we know the injury concerns, obviously, Cade McNamara. You don't want him in harm's way. It's about making a read, making right decisions. And for Cade McNamara, that makes a whole lot of sense. And then you have the other side. And if you go young with Marco Lyonez, James Reeser coming in, those two quarterbacks do have wheels, do have an ability to run the football. And with that, then you can add some more elements to this one. So that's something I think that can work. Now, I mentioned this, I think, on yesterday's podcast. Go back when Minnesota had the really good year. And of course, they came into Kinnick and got beat, and how great that was. And their 10-0 start, a win against Penn State, and they get beat at Kinnick Stadium. But watching Tanner Morgan run that offense and just slant route after slant route after slant route that they were able to run, you see what the linebacker does. Does he react? Does he come forward for the run? All right, I'm going to keep myself as a quarterback, and I'm going to make that quick pitch and make an easy completion and be able to pick up 8, 10, 12 yards. And if your receiver makes a play, even more than that. So I think it is a scheme that does make sense for Iowa, and something, as we're looking for evolution, definitely can work for what they're trying to do. The years were successful at Western Michigan until the wheels fell off in the final season. Tim Lester also had two guys that left early that season. Sky Moore, I think a lot of people know him. A disappointment, certainly, in Kansas City. His quarterback also left early. He was undrafted, but was a really good quarterback. Those guys had eligibility remaining. Tim Lester had more wide receivers drafted in the NFL than Iowa has under the previous regime as the OC. At Western Michigan, pretty good. Pretty good there. Two wide receivers gone, and another highly successful one. And we know about, obviously, the passing game of Iowa. So there are reasons for optimism. Now, your takes on things. You can always hit us up on the YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe while you're there and leave your comments. You can find us on Twitter at Locked On Iowa, or myself at Trent Condon, Condon. And you can find me there with your comments. We'll come back with the mailbag. Plus, we get ready for Iowa, Indiana. We do that as we continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday, all about getting the best seat on the couch. If you're at a party, got to make sure you got that right spot. If you can get the remote, that's even better. You know, have to hit up the volume a couple of times. People getting a little too loud. Grab your favorite football snack, wings definitely, and place some super bets. Taking a look at the matchup, 49ers and Chiefs. 1.5 is currently the number. The prop menu. I started to dig in a little bit last night to it at FanDuel, and I will tell you what, we got a long list that we got to purse through and try to make this thing right and get you some ideas of where we're going to go. Of course, Kansas City, can you bet against Patrick Mahomes? I think as we found out the last couple of weeks, not always the right way to go. We'll get into that as we get closer to the game. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or two or three. Not only can you bet on who's going to win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points are going to be scored, and so much more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook of the NFL. Trent kind of back with you again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll get into Iowa, Indiana coming up tonight on the hardwood. But before that, let's go to the comment section on YouTube and our mailbag here. A lot of thoughts on the hiring of Tim Lester. We open things up as we just scroll through here. Some negativity, some positivity, all kinds of different things in there. We kick things off by Jason Schroeder. He says, nice passive aggressive move by KF. I'm so done with this guy. See, I'm not there. And I was frustrated. I definitely was with Kirk just because I probably dead wrong, but I wanted to see a splashy hire. Look, Kirk Ferentz has delivered a whole lot to us, and I can understand the concerns, the way that things ended with Hayden Fry. I was there. My freshman year at Iowa was Hayden's final year, and know how bad it got. I don't think we're in the same level here. I don't see this falling apart in the same kind of fashion. I'm still hopeful, and I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater with Kirk. Are there things that frustrate me? Absolutely. How long this took, the way that they went about it, waiting until January to really get this thing going, that's frustrating, definitely, but that's where we are. This comes from Guy Caballero. Any word yet if we'll be getting a dedicated quarterbacks coach? While Lester was a QB himself, the amount of responsibilities an OC has lessens the detailed coaching we can give QBs. With the position being so critical in any offensive success, shouldn't we give them the best possible support? I fear Kirk mandated keeping everything the same as before, including the OC also being the quarterback coach. I think Lester is going to be the quarterback coach. That's been a big part of his background, a former quarterback himself, as we've talked about. So I anticipate that's going to be the case. And remember, you do have staff restrictions. You don't have unlimited on-field coaching, as we saw the last 2 years with John Budmeyer as the consultant, if you will. He was a quarterback's coach, but couldn't do the on-field stuff at the same level that you'd hope for here. I think Tim Lester is going to be fine in that role, something that Kirk likes to have his OC also be the quarterback's coach, and that's why Brian was handed that title with absolutely no reasoning behind it. But I think that's going to be the case. I love it or hate it, but that's going to be the likelihood. Let's see what else we got here. This from Lieb, 9905. I find it personally offensive, pun intended, that you call it an uninspiring hire. Screw you. Oh, Lieb. All right, relax, buddy. I thought it was uninspiring. It didn't inspire confidence in me that this thing was going to get turned around. I think there are positives. I think there are things that are going to be all right to be with. And that's definitely something that had damn good numbers at Western Michigan. He did. He also had terrible numbers in his final season there and terrible numbers at Syracuse. All right. This from Rich Carlson. I think you got to calm down, Trent. Sometimes easier said than done. You're smarter than this. We can argue about that. How about look at some film and really talk about what we've seen? I have, and saw plenty of breakdowns, both listening to Tim Lester talk about his RPO offense and what they're going to do. Speaking of that, this will be interesting. Didn't run a whole lot of 12 personnel with one running back, two tight ends, something you're going to see a ton. Obviously, Luke Lachey coming back for a season, coupled with the ascension of Addison Estrenga. Something he didn't do a ton. It was more three receiver looks at Western Michigan. how that evolves and how that changes. I did see an interesting clip talking about usage at the tight end position in an RPO based system. It's something that can work out incredibly well. So I'm excited about that and see how he can marry it if again he's allowed to implement the RPO based system. Let's see, Jim Wood. I'm excited to have someone who played quarterback with his success, plus headed up offense that could score. Right there with you, Jim. I think that's a possibility. This is from Bellator Devritis. This was about money. Johns wanted more than Kirk was willing to spend, but Kirk also blew this from the start by not getting an OC hire done in December like successful programs do. Missed out on top candidates. That's something that we've talked about a little bit, and I'm with you. The timing, I understand. The guys that are there, working with them, all those things, but I think there was a missed opportunity. I really did. Dragging his feet, something we can look back upon and possibly being a bit of an issue. Thomas Hahn, an offense 100 or above is a big improvement from what we saw the last few years. Absolutely. We'd take that. Definitely get into the double digits. How about that? There's goal number one. Get into the double digits this season. Total offense, yards per play, scoring offense, all those different things. I think that's going to be a big one there. Johns wanted more money. That's also from Thomas Hahn. Probably $2+ million a year. Not going to pay him more than Phil Parker. No, you're not going to pay him more than Phil Parker. And if that's what he was looking for, the going rate I know of offensive coordinators has increased. Kevin Johns was a nice candidate, not a $2 million a year candidate. I agree with that part of it. Tom Hammer, what's with the text on the screen saying uninspiring offensive coordinator? Because I believed it was an uninspiring hire. Didn't mean that it's bad. Were you really inspired by the last one? No, I was not, Tom. In fact, I was one of the few people that was, on radio, as I still am on KXNO. You can catch me every weekday from 11 to 1, talking the world of sports. But at the time, I was one of the few people that didn't like the hire at the time. And, every once in a while, I get things right. Gary Faber. John's wanted more money. Yeah, we've talked about that one. Need to give the man a chance. Right there with you. We'll give him a chance. We're also going to talk about it. We're going to talk about concerns. That's how this works. We're not going to sit here and just everything is sunshine and rainbows. That's not what we do. That's not reality. If things are negative, we'll talk about the negativity. If things are great, we're going to talk about that too. Am I confident that this is going to work? I'm not. Am I hopeful? Absolutely. There's a good way, a succinct way to put it. Let's see what else we got here. We'll see what happens. This is from Matt Kosman. He runs a spread offense. We don't have receivers. There is a big one there. More portal shopping. Well, Iowa is 7 over the scholarship limit right now before we get to spring practice. And obviously the next portal season that'll be opening in April. A lot of movement will be happening there. Iowa's got to figure out numbers. And we know, obviously, coming back, Caleb Brown, I think you're excited about him. He's got to get better. Got to be able to catch the ball more with his hands. Had too many drop passes in his first campaign being out there. Remember, this is a guy transitioning from being a high school running back. So there's still time. But the speed power combination that he has, there's excitement there. I think they can still unlock more from Seth Anderson. He's probably got to put on 15 pounds of muscle, but I think you got something there. At least he can be a competent receiver. And then, what do the young guys hit? Jarrett Bowie, who at least was part of the travel team this season as a true freshman. Dayton Howard, guys like that. Are there some of those young guys coming up the ranks that can help out? But you're right. Right now, not exactly a wide receiver room that you're really excited about. Let's see. What else? Let's see. Andy. Trent, you mentioned that Kirk has lost his touch. I'm afraid he's lost touch, period. I don't know if lost his touch. I don't know exactly the way that I phrased it at the time. I don't think he's lost his touch. I mean, the guy, he's won as many games. He's in the top 10 in terms of victories over the last 5 seasons in all of college football. But offensively, there was a gap. And it very well could have been just the angle of nepotism, right? It's the sun, and he couldn't see the forest through the trees. And that very well could be the fact there. I'm not sure if he's lost his touch overall. Let's see. Larry Wallman. So you didn't call Kirk and Beth and offer your expert opinion on who to hire. No, I don't have their numbers. I would love to. I don't think they'd take my call. But no, I did not. Sorry about that, Larry. Next time I get their number, though, I'll make sure to dial them up. I don't think that my input was going to go real far there. Like Kirk Ferentz knows in his little pinky finger more than I do about the game of football. I get that. I understand that. I'm just like you and me. We watch games. We have fun. We enjoy them, and we try to break them down and give you something at least entertaining to talk about. But no, Kirk Ferentz, yes, knows more football than me. RC Havis. I will say as a positive compared to BF is at least he's been an OC before, actually called plays before, hired, and been a head coach. Played quarterback at a high level and continues. Yeah, I'm with you. I think there are things like the initial shock and the disappointment that was there. It's going to dissipate. I think all of us are going to get there and try to build some positivity here. There are just where we are. Right off the, this is from Henry Bank. Right off the go, all negative. These podcasts are all the same. You claim to know something about Iowa football. How many practices have you been to? What's your skill level to evaluate players? You don't enjoy Iowa football, go somewhere else. I'm not going to. I've been a fan for 43 years. I'm not going to root for anybody else. No, Henry, I'm not going to root for Nebraska. It's not going to happen. It's a team that I care about. And yes, Henry continued talking about the old days. My whole lifetime, I have known two coaches. I was born in 1980. Hayden was a sitting coach at that time. I've known two in my life. And we have been highly successful. I've had a lot of high moments. The reason that maybe this offensive coordinator hire felt so important is not only how this is going to end for Kirk Ferentz, but with what Phil Parker has done defensively. You're talking about historic defense. And I mentioned a moment ago, this program, when you stack them up in terms of victories over the last 5 years, they rate as well as anybody short of the Blue Bloods in college football. However, it could have been more. It could have been better. With some competency offensively, what more could have there been? Are we talking about a playoff berth? Are we talking about a Big Ten championship? We saw how deep the hole was compared to Iowa and Michigan 2 of the last 3 years. But with something offensively, maybe we're having different conversations here. And that's a bit where my frustration lies, because I want to see this end well. I want to see Kirk go off into the sunset. I don't want to see a 3-8 season, which would be a 3-9 season, like Hayden had to go through in his final year. I don't want this to end poorly. And that's why I think some of the angst about the OC hire definitely has been there. Let's get one more in here. Matthew Carey, the silver lining for me is having a legit quarterback coach in-house. Lester was an outstanding quarterback, and having him in the room should be an immediate benefit. Like many, his OC resume does not inspire me. However, I'm always one to wait and see the product on the field before passing judgment. And I am talking judgment on our field with our players and talents, not the past. Past stats are good for reference, but not with our stable. So I'd like to see what he does, also officially hear from him. Hopefully we get an intro presser this week. Now we just have to get a solid wide receiver coach in-house as well. Right there with you. Matthew, I think you said it incredibly well. Those are the comments we like, not the screw yous. No, we don't need those. The good ones. Lay it out. Be good. Let's be good to each other. How about that? We continue here on Locked On Hawkeyes. Hoops coming up tonight. It's Indiana. Iowa tries to win their 5th consecutive game. Mike Woodson still searching for that first win against Fran McCaffrey, and there's been some fireworks. Get excited about that. We'll get excited about the game. Break it down next here. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but just for a moment, let's talk about preparing for real life. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than having my son or daughter. My wife got sick, and a supply chain issue kept them from the life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jace Medical. A Jace case is a pack of 6 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, and so many others. It can happen to any of us. So visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Once again, that's jacemedical.com, JASE medical.com. Trent Conner back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Basketball tonight, 6 o'clock Central tip-off, as it will be Indiana playing host to the Iowa Hawkeyes. So you remember this series a year ago. It was crazy. I took my daughter to the game in Carver Hawkeye. Iowa gets run out of the gym early on. Looked like it was going to be a blowout. I was frustrated. My daughter, who was 7 at the time, said, "Dad, it's okay. There's a lot of time left in the game." And she was right. Dad was wrong. And what a comeback it was, one for the ages. Then they go later in the season to Assembly Hall, which in the past have been a house of horrors, and they put it on them, knocking down three-pointers from all over the place. Tony Perkins was elite, making shots. Sanford was knocking down threes. He was blowing kisses at the student section at the end of the game. Mike Woodson, Fran McCaffrey, they've gotten into it a few different times. Can tell that there's definitely no love loss between these two programs, but Indiana this year, this is not the Indiana from a season ago. The Hoosiers do have identical 10-8 record that the Hawkeyes do at this point in time, but it's a lot different look. Indiana this year has struggled really all over the floor. Defensively, offensively, they have just not been a very good team throughout the course of the season. They come into this one losers of 3 in a row. Got blown out by Purdue. Raise your hand. Yeah, we've had the same issue that has happened there. Then after that, they go to Wisconsin, get beat up bad. Then they go to Illinois, hang around in that game, but still get beat. So they come back home, losers of 3 straight, lost 4 of their last 5. They've lost 5 of their last 7. Not playing good basketball. Right now, Khalil Ware is probably their, I don't know, most impactful player. He's a big load. Big dude, 7-footer, got size to him, got some girth. He's got some skill too, but he's a powerful player. And as we know, Ben Krikke, not the best defender. Owen Freeman, just a freshman here. Look, we need to keep those guys on the floor. And because of the 2-foul rule that Fran implements, and once you get that second foul, you're out of the game. That's definitely something that is a little bit concerning. Something that I think you do have to be concerned about overall. But Iowa inside, I think they play incredibly well at times with the two-headed monster that they've gone with. That's something that they can do. I think you'll see some doubles out there. Indiana's not shot the ball very well. In fact, this season, they're a team that gets most of their points from inside the three-point line, and one of the tops in the country in that one. So it's about stopping dribble drive, playing some better defense, doing those kind of things, and then you got to make shots. The good thing is Indiana has not been very good this year. I mean, this Indiana team, as we said, both sides of the basketball, both offensively and defensively, have been a struggle. So Xavier Johnson is back. He's been banged up this year. He'll be back out there at point guard. Feels like he's been around for a long time. Same with Trey Galloway, this year, number 4, number 5. He's been around forever. Up front, though, that's where they can beat you. So Mbako is true freshman, a really good prospect, lanky. He's got some size to his game, 6'8". He's not tapped his full potential, but he'll be out there. Reno's the other guy that one of their top offensive players that you're going to see. And of course, as we talked about, we're inside. It's a winnable road game. And for Iowa, you got to start stacking these up. We continue to talk about it, but it's important. You got to get victories. And this is another winnable game on the schedule. Iowa is projected to win their next 4 games. Now, after that, they're projected to lose 7 of their last 8, but the next 4 at Indiana, home for Ohio State, Penn State, and Minnesota after that. It's another one. Keep the mojo going. Keep Sanford hot. Keep doing Tony Perkins things. And TP against Indiana. Of course, as an Indiana guy, he was overlooked. Didn't get an offer from the Hoosiers or the Boilermakers. He was overlooked by most everybody in college basketball. Seems like he's got a little extra juice in these kind of games. And one of his last opportunities, well, in fact, his last opportunity to play back at home, unless something crazy happens in tournament play, this is going to be the last time that Tony Perkins, if this is his final go-around in a Hawkeye uniform, will be in Indiana. Let's get another big game from TP and another big victory for the Hawkeyes. We'll be back with you to break it all down in your feed after the game for the Wednesday program. We'll take a look back at that. Also get ready for Iowa on the women's side, getting ready to get back on the hardwood. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Locked On has also launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. We'll talk to you again tomorrow after, hopefully, a Hawkeye victory against Indiana. Enjoyed it. A lot of Lester talk today, a lot of football. We got you covered, your team every day here on the Locked On Network. Go Hawks.